Good morning, everyone, and you're very welcome to this session of Enterprise University. If it's your first time to join me, you're very, very welcome. And I'm Sharon Mulligan, the product expert here with Enterprise. And today's session is all about our new production module. So just to give you a full run through on all of the features and options that are available to you to utilize now within the platform. And of course, as always, we'll have a live demonstration of how to utilize those features and to make them work for you within your organization. So just a little bit of housekeeping. As always, this session is fully recorded and will be made available to you on our website under the resources in the Enterprise University tab. But of course, we'll be in touch to let you know when the recording has been made available. Okay, well, let's start, and I'll start sharing my screen and we'll go through what today's lesson is going to cover so that you're fully aware of the benefit and the value that you're going to get out of today's training. So advanced production, we're calling it advanced production, but in effect it is an all new production module within Enterprise. And the idea behind this was to give you a full offering for production and to being able to manage your whole production process within the platform. And this, of course, is from two elements where you have it, of course, on the web application. And ultimately, what that will lead to when we fully develop the WMS, which is your handheld within the warehouse, that you'll be able to incorporate this into your warehouse management system. But you can also do that from today from the point of view of picking stock and bringing stock in and receiving it in from your suppliers and placing it in bins or locations within your warehouse. So let's just look at the outline for today's lesson. So we'll just have a production overview. So just to give you an idea of what it is we're going to cover off in today's session. We will obviously look at the initial settings. So this is just a reminder of how do I switch this on? So how do I get this up and running for my organization? How do I switch it on for each of my users? Are there any other considerations as well? And yes, there are. So I will make you aware of those other considerations, particularly as we go through each of the elements of the module itself. We will look at the production process, so adding the production orders, how easy and simple it is to do that. We will also look at the MRP. So the MRP, of course, is to create demand for the product, to see where exactly you might need demand for raw materials, and that would be to create bulk purchase orders in order to order that directly from your suppliers and to ensure that you replenish that stock in time for the production process. There's also a part of that as well that you can create production orders for your bill of material items. So that's where you can create bulk production orders also through the MRP screen itself. We will look at planning for production. So that's where you have added all your production orders. You're now ready to ensure that that is carried out correctly. So whether that's by a specific route, so that could be a machine or that could be a user, whatever you deem that necessary to use. So we have a route user field. You'll see that when we do that through the live demonstration, where you can define exactly the route that the production is going to take place, just so that when the production is complete, for example, if it's against a specific machine, that you can see all those completed items against a specific machine or user or route, whatever it is that you require within your organization settings for that. So we'll look at how that's all done through the resource planner, and of course how you can customize the resource planner as well and make it work better for you. We'll also look at picking those production orders. So for example, you've made the final product and you want to now go pick those production orders within the warehouse. Maybe they're on a specific bin or a specific shelf where those items have been made and produced, and you now want to go and collect those and get them ready then, of course, ultimately for delivery to your customers. So production day, and it's all around, of course, making your final product. And there's loads of different ways you can do this. We can do this directly from the production order itself. I will touch on where you can also do that directly from the item master screen, and where you can also do it from a sales order screen. And that's really just reminding you of the different ways that you can use the system and the ways that you can access information across the platform. But ultimately today we're focusing in on the production element and how you can make that product for yourself. In addition to that, and this again is just a reminder of where you can track your production items, all the reporting that's available within the system. So whether you're reporting on your stock postings, your movements, your batch or serial items, or for example, you want to look at the production order history. So you want to see the production history on a particular bill of material item, where you can do that within the system. And of course, don't forget that all the grids within our platform can all be customized, can all be filtered. You can run reports directly from any of the filters as they currently stand. So that's just making you fully aware of where to utilize all the information that's already in front of you in the system. And of course, we'll move on directly then to a live demonstration. So I'll take you through adding a production order, running it through MRP, running it through then the resource planner to schedule that in for a machine or a warehouse or for a particular user, wherever that location may be. And then of course, ultimately how to make the final product from the production order, which is of course, very, very simple to do. And I'll just remind you as well of where you can filter on reports on the grids during that live demonstration. So hold tight, lots to get through, obviously, excuse me, over the next hour. Sorry, excuse me. So let's start off with the overall overview. And the idea, I guess, today is I've got a heading in there about, managing production can be a complex process. But the idea, of course, from today's lesson is to remove that complexity and to simplify it down and to give you an offering that shows you how you can simplify that within the platform. So of course, inevitably, a lot of companies do require multi-levels of BOM, and that they of course can include additional costs, whether that be labour or other costs that are part of the production process itself. So how do you manage all of that within the system? So as I've mentioned, we will look at, of course, the settings where you can enable the production and all the required settings. We will touch on settings again throughout the lesson because there's certain elements, of course, that also will require their own settings to switch on. We'll also look at the production orders, so how to add those for each of the stage of the manufacturing, the MRP to restock, so that's posting our purchase orders to maintain stock levels for our raw materials, and then of course if we want to post production orders in bulk for our bill of material items. Production scheduling, which I've mentioned already, so scheduling production to the work floor, just as an example there, and of course picking stock for production. And of course, picking, as you know, is something we've already got on the system this year. It's something that we've already rolled out, for example, to your sales orders. So that's already relevant as it stands, and particularly in regards to our WMS, which is our warehouse management system, where you've made your final product and you now want to get it ready for delivery to your customer. So you pick the sales order in relation to the customer to get it ready within the warehouse and get it packaged and out the door and delivered off to your customer. So that picking is something that's already in place against your sales orders and in fact against reserve invoices as well for sales. So just reminding you of where all of this fits in the overall platform as well. So let's kick off by starting off with what we've done over the last 2 months with releasing phase 1 and phase 2 of production. So what we've basically done is we've brought in a whole new production menu. So the purpose of the menu, as you can see here, is to manage the full production process. So we start off with the first button, which is our orders, and this is where we will house and manage all of the production orders. So this is where you can add new production orders. You can see where production orders are progressing. So for example, where they've changed status, where they're moving through the status going from pending to planned, perhaps that they've complete where the product has been made. You can see, for example, all of the relevant information against that production order, when it was planned, when it's due to start, when it's due to end. You can also see all the cost lines, components, Within the production order itself as well, you can monitor, for example, as I said, you can make the final product, but you can also see on a status bar, you can see exactly how that's progressing from day one to the current day. And you can also see in terms of stock levels and availability, well, what am I going to need in order to produce this item? So currently as it stands, if I add a production order, what am I going to need to progress this production order through the system? So we'll look at all of that today as well. We have a bill of materials tab. And simply what we've done here is we've brought all of your bill of material items into one tab. This particular tab emulates exactly what you see currently on your items menu. So when you go into items and you go to items and you have your items grid, this is in effect the items grid, but we have basically set the filter in the back end to only show you the bill of material items. In addition to that, we have a quick fire action to the items tab itself. So you can see there the third button there is to items, and that will obviously get you to the items screen itself, where you can see all of your raw materials or bill of materials or any other item that you have within the system. So that just brings you back a step to the items menu. And of course then the last three options that we've mentioned from the beginning there, we have the MRP. So this is your item reordering. This is where you get to replenish stock and look at demand that you may need for the production process. So look at what you may need, particularly for your raw materials. Am I going to run out of raw materials? Do I need to run off demand for those raw materials and ensure they're ordered and received on time from my suppliers? So all done through the MRP. And then of course with the resource planning. So this is where you will get to allocate the production orders to the relevant resource. So whether that's a route or a user, whatever you have defined in the system as those users or as those routes, so that could be a machine, that could be the work floor, that could be the user. So whatever you need that to mean within the system, and then you can allocate resources, schedule the time in. Perhaps there's other elements that need to be also scheduled with that production. For example, with a production run, you might have quality and assurance at the end of that production run. That might take a half an hour to ensure that that product is ready for delivery to any customer. And it might just need a check that's done within the warehouse or within an area of the warehouse, or perhaps that's an engineer that carries out the work. So that might be scheduled as, for example, a service call or as an activity. And you can also schedule that as well within the resource planning. So you'll see that during the live demonstration. And last but not least, we have the picking menu. So that's where you'll be able to set those production orders to picking. You'll also see the option in there as well for the sales orders and reserve, purely because we're using the same functionality, but it will default primarily to your production orders within the production menu. So just an overview of the menu as we currently have it. And as I said, you can see already in terms of the platform where you're utilizing multiple functionality that is already there within the system, particularly when it comes to inventory and the item reordering and resource planning. So let's take a look at the settings, and let's have a look at the initial settings that you need to have in place in order to have a user up and running and using the production menu. So very simply, you need to manage the access for production in the user permissions. This is in the user settings. So when you go into settings, go into user settings, and if you edit a user, and again, remember that, of course, when you edit a user now, you can select from all the different organizations potentially that you might have on the system. So select that organization and come down here to the production section where you can switch on to enabled. And then there's three primary options there. There's production order, BOM report, which is the BOM menu that I mentioned already, and of course the production resource planning option. Considerations. So you're wondering why you don't see the MRP and of course the picking option there. So the considerations are, does this user already have access to items? Is it read-only or is it full access? And of course they're given through, this is given through, the access to items is given through the items permissions, the items permission section. Item reordering. which again is specific to MRP. That's given through the procurement or purchasing permissions. So you need to check each of these areas to ensure that if you need a user to avail of the MRP, that they've got access to item reordering in purchasing. The third one there, of course, is the assign picker. If you want them to be able to assign a picker in the pick menu, again, that's through the items permissions. What I'll do is at the very end during the demonstration, if we have time, I'll show you that also in the permission screen of where you need to ensure that each of those elements are switched on for the user in case there's something that you currently can't see and you're wondering, what is it that I haven't enabled? So they're just your considerations to have in place before using the full production module. I'm going to bring you back a little step because this was something that would have been delivered as part of the university earlier in the year. And this is part of the inventory management or items, the introduction to items. And I'm just going to remind you about the bill of materials. Again, I'm considering that potentially I have somebody on board here today that maybe are using the system for the very first time. And I want you to understand how it is that we use bill of materials within the system. So it'll just all make sense as we're using production. So this is just a reminder of what a bill of material item is. So it's the component list of a finished item. So you have a finished item and it's made up of, let's say, 3 or 4 components that are brought together to produce the final goods. It is made up of the quantity of each item required. So when you look at the bill of materials, so even though you might only require to produce one of them, the components themselves will have a number of quantities that are required in order to make that final item. There can be a cost of labour applied or other costs can be added. The cost price of the components makes up the finished item cost. So that's important. Making a finished item depletes the stock. So that, of course, will deplete the raw materials. There are multiple margin calculation methods available. I have a good article on that, in fact, on the Help Centre if you want to understand margins and gross profit. This is something that we are extending as well in terms of how we calculate gross profit on sales transactions, for example. But in terms of margin calculation and the methods available to you, take a look at the Help Centre article, but it's also built in. You'll see that when you're looking at the bill of material production history, you can specify the margin calculation methods at that point in time. So for example, moving average, actual, last purchase price, just some of the ones that we use within the system. Production orders, of course, can be added and planned for bill of material items. BOMs can deplete from different warehouses. And of course, ultimately, BOMs can be, or bill of materials can be part of a multi-level BOM. So you can have a bill of material within a bill of material within a bill of material, for example. So you can have multi-levels of bill of materials within the system and all the stock being managed and depleted during the production process or during any process where stock is leaving the system or being received in. Or being, of course, then ultimately delivered out to your customers. So just wanted to remind you of that. And obviously, I just want to give you an idea just to plant the seed in your head. This is just a sample of a very simple BOM, just to show you how it's handled within the system. So we've taken a bicycle here. This is our finished item, but it's made up of a certain amount of raw materials. But you can see here 2 wheels, 1 frame, 1 handlebars, 1 saddle, 1 chain, 2 sets of brakes. But ultimately, we manage all of these. This is the BOM, including the raw materials, all as actual stock items. So the purpose of that, of course, is to track the movement of the quantity coming in, the quantity coming out. That's for both our raw materials and our bill of materials as it leaves the building. And of course, as it's produced and made and brought into stock. And then finally, of course, delivered on to your customer. And in terms of valuation, and we work on a perpetual inventory basis. So it's always a moving average or a moving value of stock that goes through the system with the perpetual inventory. So perpetual inventory very simply means that from the moment that you receive stock in, so each day that you receive stock in, the value of that stock is constantly moving and being accounted for at that point in time. And when that stock is issued out, of course, the value and the movement is also accounted for on the issue. So just perpetual, meaning that it's moving and the value is being updated at all times. So let's move on to the production orders themselves. So now that we have some background information, how to get set up, what the bill of materials actually is, what it potentially could look like, for example, let's look at the production orders and how you can add those for the different stage of manufacturing. So a production order. So production orders, basically you add a production order for the BOM item, which is the bill of material item. You will get to see the stock level details on the header. So you'll get to see a lot of information just by placing the bill of material item onto a production order. You will get to see what's currently stock on hand, what's potentially committed to customers, and the quantity of what you can make from the production run. So straight away you're going to be alerted even on screen as you add the production order if there is not sufficient raw materials, for example, to complete that particular item. The great thing as well when it comes to the raw materials, so the bill of material that we saw there, for example, with the bike. So the raw materials can be changed on the production order. So what if we decided that the frame wasn't going to be the standard frame, it was going to be a coloured frame and we were going to swap that out? So you can do that all on the production run. So on the production order itself, you can change out the raw materials. So you can add and subtract as and when you need for the production run. Obviously, the production run requires planned quantities, planned dates. So that goes without saying. So we need to be able to say, well, what we want to produce during the run, and of course, the potential planned dates. Those planned dates, of course, will update based on what we schedule in the resource planner. So you can keep an eye on that as you move the production order through the process. You can, of course, assign your production order to a customer and, of course, a root user. So the root user I have mentioned from the start is potentially what you deem it to be within the system. So whether that's a user within the warehouse, a specialist expert that produces this particular item. It could be a machine, for example. It could be the work floor. So whatever it is that you decide is the title or name for that particular root user. And they are defined as users within the platform. That's how you do it under the user settings. You have a progress bar. So the progress bar will show you the status. So for example, if I added a production order yesterday, I'm already 1 day in. It'll show you if it has progressed or when it's due to be produced by. So if you've already put in your planned end dates, so you've maybe got 1 day to complete production. You can set the status at each stage of the production. So of course, when we add a production order, we're automatically into the pending stage. So from there, of course, you can progress that onto the following stages. So for example, when we plan it, it'll move to planned, but then you can move that further. So for example, if you need to complete that and make the final product, so there's various stages and I'll show you that as well on screen. You can follow your production order to get notified of any updates. So this is great from the notification center. So if you're familiar already with the notification center, which is at the top of your screen there, when you click on the bell, the notification center, you can see if you've been notified of any changes or updates to specific transactions that you're following. So remember, you have to switch that on in the notification center where you want to follow production orders. But on the production order itself, there is a bell that you can switch on to ensure that you're informed of any changes or updates to that particular production order. In addition, and as we have throughout all of our transactions on the system, you can populate custom fields. So this enables you to store additional details against that particular production. So we have an object within our custom fields and that resides in our settings option where you can add additional fields. So this is information that's important to you and your organization in addition to the standard fields that we have available. But you'll be able to populate those as and when you add in the production order. And of course, when you're reviewing the production orders on the grid, you'll be able to bring those columns to view and to see the information that you've added. And of course, ultimately with the production run what do we need to do? We want to make the final product. So there will be a make button available. And of course, that's only when production order has changed status. So it's no longer pending. For example, it's planned or it has been produced. Then you can go in and make the final product. And of course, ultimately what you're doing there is you are bringing that into stock and depleting your raw materials. So just a reminder here of the production order screen, all of the things that I've just talked about there on screen. So for example, starting at the very top of the production order, this is the production order number. You can see, and you're very familiar with this already, the purple WISE tag on the bill of materials item where you can, or the production order for the customer, sorry, which is the customer's account code is at the very top. You can click on that to see the customer details. I can see the production order is open. Over here on the right hand side, I've got a looking glass, so I can either search within production orders or search within the order itself. I can click on my bell icon to follow and to be notified of any changes for this particular production order. I've got an actions menu. So the actions menu, you will see an option there where you can close the production order. So if you decide that you no longer want to follow through with production on an item, you can, of course, close the production order. You'll also have the ability there to run off or download the PDF for the production. So we do have a layout there for production orders. It's just a standard layout. Of course, anything other than that layout, if it's customized or otherwise that you need, that's something you will have to discuss with us. So making the final product as well. And of course, we've got the new order and we've got an edit button to allow you to edit the production order. The next part here will show you the item details. Again, we've got a purple WISE tag that you can see the item details and stock availability, but there's a line there that's already showing you what you have in stock, what's potentially committed to customers, maybe what's already available to sell, what's on order from suppliers, if there are, but ultimately what you can produce based on raw materials. Can you produce any of these items based on raw materials? So this is going to be important information. And of course, there you can see the status bar, so we can see any progress of the production order itself. And of course, there's the creation date, the plan dates, and they will all update as you progress the order through as well. So you can see that there in that section. And then here, of course, we have the planned quantity. And then, of course, as you complete or make the final product, the actual quantity will update. If there's any planned costs, additional costs, such as labor or anything else that's been added to the production, and then the actual cost once the production order is complete, you'll see the route or user, who that's been allocated to. Of course, the warehouse, so that's the destination warehouse. So lots of relevant information, and of course the status, this one in fact is just still pending. We also have the custom fields, so these is the additional information that you can add in against your production order, and of course the planned bill of materials. So this is in effect the bill of materials that you've already assigned to the or the raw materials that you've assigned as a component list of the bill of materials, but you can add or subtract from this list as you require on the production order, or add to it as you see fit. In addition to that, below that are the additional costs tab, and of course you can add an attachment to a production order as well. So we'll see that during the live demonstration. So just to bring you back a step, when we've added a production order and we have it on the production order grid, there's lots of things that we can see and utilize further directly on the grid itself. So I'm just reminding you of some of those, which are, for example, production costs. So where you have the cost lines, that you can see those on the grid itself. So the cost lines, the purple WISE tag, when you click onto those to see the cost lines allocated to the production. The components, again, the component lines, so you can drill in to see exactly what raw materials you have allocated to a specific production order. There's plenty more, of course, around the resource planning, and I'll remind you about those as we go through today's lesson. Okay, so the MRP. So just to remind you about what this is utilized for, which is for restocking your raw materials or for bulk production of bill of materials. So the MRP itself, so this is where you can restock items in bulk. So this is through the creation of purchase orders for your raw materials, or through the creation of production orders in bulk for your bill of material items. Enterpryze will provide a suggested reorder quantity, and that can be based on certain filters, which is minimum, maximum stock levels, or it could be the in-stock quantity, it could be committed, or it could be on order quantity for each item. There are additional filters as well that can include where raw materials are already ordered from your suppliers or are committed to production so that you can see and make informed decisions on demand for those raw materials before actually reordering them directly from your supplier. Or perhaps you've had a conversation with your supplier and he's already told you, I can't give you the maximum stock. We can only actually deliver you half the stock in the next week. So you'll have to make decisions and to amend those quantities based on what the system has suggested. So again, the MRP runs on a permission basis. So this is the permission to be assigned to users in the purchasing module to gain access to the restock option. So this is your item reordering in the purchase module. You need to make sure that the user has permission to that option so that they can see the MRP in production. So for MRP, we can process all stock items. So in fact, it doesn't have to be just your raw materials. You can process all your stock items from here as well. And of course, that includes your raw materials and of course, the bill of materials for manufacturing. They can all be done within the MRP screen. So just to give you an overview of what the screen now looks like for MRP. So as you can see there, you have you can select your item type. So whether we choose stock item or bill of materials. And as I said, stock item is all stock items other than bill of materials. So we've separated those out completely here. You can choose your filters. So there's different filters here. So for example, we can start off here by holding it down and maybe reducing it down to a specific product group. Or we can look at a specific destination warehouse. We can reorder to maximum or their reorder quantity. So if you've defined a reorder quantity against each of your items, so this is down to your item setup. What way have you defined your items? Have you put in the reorder tab a minimum maximum stock level and a reorder quantity? And of course, that will give you the ability here to automatically populate and reorder to those particular levels. And then we look at the stock level itself. So are we looking at all stock levels or are we looking at stock where it is below minimum stock level or below or at minimum stock level? In addition to that, we have the 4 switches there where we can look at committed stock or committed stock on, for example, on sales orders. We can look at committed or include stock on purchase orders. We can also include raw materials as part of the production run that are currently committed to production. And when we're looking at bill of materials, we can look at stock, include stock on production orders. So that would be your final product items. So they don't all have to be switched on. You've got to find the ones that work for you and ensure that you give you the best overview of demand based on what you need to fulfill on a production run. So here then, of course, on the grid itself, you can manually enter the reorder quantity. You can assign the root user. So the root user, this would be, of course, if we were creating a production order run where you need to assign the root or user or machine for that particular production run, and it schedules all of the production orders. So if we're utilizing bill of materials, you will get the option to create production orders at the top of the screen. Otherwise, if we're utilizing this for stock items, i.e. raw materials, you will be creating purchase orders on the top right. So the root user will only be relevant to our BOM or bill of material items for creating bulk production runs. So it's important to utilize that screen and obviously understand the different filters and make it work for the demand that you require during production. So moving on to production scheduling. So what this means. So this is where primarily you get to schedule your production orders. You can select the users, machines or routes. So I keep going back to that because of course, depending on what you've decided the root user is going to be. So the root user could be a user, it could be a machine, it could be a specific route that you take through the warehouse for production, whatever that needs to be in terms of your business model, you can define that in the system so that when you then come into production planning and select the user or machine, that you know exactly where you're going to follow on from there. The great thing here as well with the resource planner is that you can customize it. So there are different calendar types. You can find the one that suits you. So for example, different timeline views, whether that's a day view, a week view, a month view. So whatever view suits you in terms of scheduling within the system. You can customize that by selecting the working hours, the cell height, and lots more. And I'll show you that again during the live demonstration. You can customize the planner with colors. So we have a set amount of colors defined against each of the options. So you can see there even on the production planning screen, which is resource planning ultimately. You can plan orders, deliveries, services, activities, and plan production. What we've done is we've given each of those a specific color so that when you do drag and drop it onto the resource planner, that even just at a glance visually, you know, oh, grand, I've got 5 production orders. I've got maybe 5 activities that are quality and assurance that will follow those production runs. I could have engineers on site for service calls that I can just see exactly what all of the different activities are. So you can change those colors. So they're RGB codes that you can change those colors and change them from what they currently are as default. We do have a default, for example, for the open and completed colors, which is green is open and red is the color for completed. And they're just the blocks that are at the very start. You can see it there even on the screen there for those items that are scheduled. There's a color block of green at the start of each of those. That just clearly shows me that those particular transactions, which is probably orders, those sales orders are currently planned, but they are still open on the system. So you can decide what those colors are and make them work for you. The nice thing about the resource planner is it works very simply. We use a drag and drop method to take it from the list of open orders. You literally just drag the order and drag it onto your scheduler. And then from there, you can widen the time frame. You can check the details. You can, of course, for any reason you need to change the root user or change to a different machine, you can swap it around. So lots of different things that you can do directly on the planning screen itself. So just to show you where that is, so that's under resource planning within your production planning menu. And just to remind you that if you're in sales and you want to get to your resource planning, don't forget in sales, we also have resource planning, and in services, we also have resource planning. So you'll be able to see it from all of those 3 areas as well, as long as the user has permission to resource planning. So just to show you here about some of the customization that I mentioned there, for example, so when you're doing production planning, so when you're doing an employee selection, so whether that's an actual employee, whether it's a workshop, whether it's a machine or a specific route, you decide what that's going to be. You can also, change the calendar view to choose the one that suits you best. So these are all the calendar views that we have available. Choose the model that suits your business. That's what I would suggest you do. So if you need to take a look at all the different models that are there, and of course you'll find that users as well over another, but take the one that works best for you. And of course you can apply that then. And of course, in terms of the calendar view itself, so you can specify your working hours here with the start and end time, the cell duration. So are they half-hour slots? Are they 1-hour slots? Are they 2-hour slots, 3-hour, 4-hour, etc. So you can increase those cell durations as you see fit for your organization. The row height, very simple way just to make the height of the row bigger for you. And this is really useful where you might have 2 or 3 resources scheduled for a specific machine. You might have a couple of production orders, or you might have a production order and an activity and a service call that need to all be carried out in relation to that particular production. And you can have them all within the same cell. But in order to see them all together, you can simply just increase the row height that you always see all 3 together within that particular cell. So make it work for you. That's the whole idea with the resource planner. You can also actually schedule the production orders directly from the grid. So I'm all the time bringing you back to the grid because the grid is going to be your, it's always going to be the point at which you go back to retrieve information or to find out exactly what's happening with a particular production order. Has it been planned? Has it not been planned? What costs have I got added against it? What component lines have I got added against it as well? And if you want to see it progress and to run off, for example, if you wanted to find out against a specific machine, if that's the way you've utilized it, if you have a root user as a specific machine and you want to identify the current production runs against that specific machine, what's currently pending, what's been planned, you simply create the relevant filter reports directly on the grid itself. So utilizing the grid, set your filter reports, create those reports so that you can just quickly access them every time you need them. You just click on the title of the report, it runs it for you. So you might just want to look at all pending or all planned or all pending for a specific machine so that you know what's been allocated to that particular machine. Or perhaps you want to look at what was produced on that machine in the last month, what's actually been completed. So what items, what finished goods have I produced on that particular machine over the last week? So you can see all of that as well directly from the grid, utilizing the filters and creating those filtered reports. So with the resource planner, directly from the grid, I can click on the planned start date, which will activate my WISE panel. And from here, I can update the resource planner. So even when I've already scheduled something to be done, if I need to move that on, for example, by a half an hour, okay, I can go directly to the resource planner to do that. Or if I'm on the grid, I can make a quick update directly from the grid itself, just by clicking on the planned start date. And there I get access to the resource planning WISE panel. I can update that start date and time. If for any reason the user has changed, that the user that was going to carry out the work is perhaps out sick, I can now change that to a different user or a different machine. If the machine has broken down and I'm going to move that onto a different machine, I can also do or swap the change here directly from the grid. So it makes it really, really simple to use. I can, of course, if I haven't already planned that production order, I can do it from the grid as well. So you can see there, for example, we've got a series of production orders that have NA against them. So I can simply click on that NA, and by doing so, I can allocate that particular production order to the resource planner. So just bringing all of the standard functionality that we have on the system to the grid as well, and just making you fully aware that you don't have to be in the production order itself or in the resource planning tab itself, that even when you've allocated all of these items somewhere else, that you can change where they need to go. So change the root user so that it goes into somebody else's diary, somebody else's calendar, that you can track that and see exactly where the job has been moved to. Okay, so let me move on to picking. So this is where you can assign production orders to a pick list to pick them, and of course, ultimately is to deliver those to your customers. They can be assigned to be picked in the warehouse. You can print the picking list, so you can do that from the current picking grid, monitor the progress, and of course, ultimately, when you have your sales order, bring that through to delivery and deliver to your customer. What we have coming soon to tie that all in with the WMS handhelds, you'll be able to pick if you wanted to, you could pick the production orders from the handhelds as well. Of course, ultimately, what you're going to do is actually make the product, complete the production run, and ultimately pick the sales order, then get ready for delivery to the customer. But you will have that option coming soon on the WMS handheld as well to pick the production orders. So very simply, on the picking tab, you can see there, it's got the production order set as default there. So we start with selecting production orders for picking. Then you select the orders you want to pick. So you can see that we're just selecting them in the column here. And then simply at the top, you select your picker or your user, and then you assign them as the picker. It's that simple. So that's directly from the picking tab within the production menu. In addition to that, when we look at the production orders, This is the production orders tab or the picking orders tab. You can see that the pick status is now updated to pick, and the picker has also been updated with your selection as well. This can also be managed, as we've shown you there with the resource planner. This can all be managed as well through the production orders tab itself. So on the production orders grid, if you expose the picker column, again, it has a purple WISE tag. You can click on the name that's already been assigned as the picker, or you can see there that we've got a selection of some of those production orders where it's not assigned. It's the same thing. You click on the purple WISE tag and you will get a WISE panel where you can update the picker and the pick status. So if you want to change that, for example, you can do all of that here directly from the WISE panel, which will update the production orders grid, and it will also update the picking production orders grid as well. So lots of quick access, lots of ways of getting in and out of information faster through the system, and particularly through the grids. So I'm bringing you back a step to the initial settings for the picking, because I did mention that at the very start on our original settings of some of the considerations that we have to make and ensure that our users have access to certain options. So for picking, when you go in here to settings, I'm just reminding you where settings is. So settings here at the top of the screen, into user settings. And if you scroll down to the items settings, you will see an option here for assign pick. So that needs to be switched on for any of your users to pick production order, sales reserve invoice. For all three of those, that's where the assign pick needs to be switched on. Okay, so that's just the initial settings for that. And then we move on to making the final product. So I mentioned once we've brought our production order through the production process, you will get to the point on the production order screen itself where the make button will be available. So can you see that here on the right side of the screen? So we're on our production, we've completed production run, and now we're ready to make the final product. So that's in order to bring the finished item into stock and to deplete our raw materials. So when we click on the make button, it activates our make BOM. And if you're familiar with already using bill of materials in Enterprise, you will know that this is the same WISE panel that you see if you were to make a BOM directly from your item details screen, or for example, if I was doing that from a sales transaction screen. And I'll remind you where they are, where they reside as well in the item master, so that you can see where this comes into place. So for example, I can see here that this particular item, it's asking me the quantity to make, what warehouse to make it to. So of course, I've already specified that as the destination warehouse, but if for any reason I now want to create that in an additional warehouse, I can. Additional costs, unless I've specified those in the production run. But if I now have additional costs that have been incurred as a result of the production run, perhaps there was something got broken during the production and we had to replace something on the machinery or replace something on an item, and it costs us to do that, we can add in the additional costs here as well. And of course, when it comes to making the item itself, you can see here the maximum quantity available to make based on the raw materials. It's going to remind you the maximum of what can be made as a result of the raw materials that are available. And of course, if we have batch or serial numbers assigned to any of our raw materials, we will have to edit those and select the ones relevant to this production of this particular item when we make the final item. So just to show you, just to bring you back to where you can also do this directly from the stock details or the stock item screen. So this is all managed in the bill of materials tab on your actual stock item screen. There's an option down here at the bottom where you can make the final product. You specify your make to warehouse, your quantity, and of course the make itself. And this would be, of course, outside of the production process, but I'm just reminding you of where these reside, because of course, when you're looking at your bill of materials screen, you're going to see all of these options and you're going to wonder, well, could I have made it from there as well? But ideally, you make it from the production order so that you can complete the final production order from there. In addition, we have the Make BOM button also exists. I'm just showing you here, for example, in our sales orders, when we click on the item and when we look at the item details, there is also a Make BOM button here at the bottom for our bill of material item, where we can complete and make a finished item from a sales transaction. So ultimately, what it all leads to is getting the delivery out to our customer. And of course, it brings you all the way back to the resource planning, which is where you already have a sales order on the system added for that particular final product. And you want to make sure now that that is delivered to your customer. And maybe you've promised them Friday, but due to delays in production, that might have to be Monday. So now you've rescheduled for Monday and you want to make sure. So for example, if you're using our delivery app, so you've brought your order to delivery and you now want to schedule that delivery with the delivery driver or the van driver, you can then drag and drop that to your resource planner and that will be picked up on our delivery mobile app where the van driver has gone on site to deliver the final goods and get signature and confirmation of delivery to your customer. So that kind of just brings it all full circle in terms of delivery then from production and getting it out the door to your customer as well. Just a reminder of where production history can be seen. So for example, we have on the stock item details. So this is going back to the stock item details. I'll remind you of where this is. On the stock item details, you will see there we have a production history tab. So what this does is this takes a record of all of the production history. So that's where you've created goods issue. So goods issue for the issue of the raw materials and the goods receipt where the final product has been received into stock. So that will track all of the raw materials issued, final product received, the finished item prices, the raw materials cost, the margin. So this is where you'll get to see the margin based on the margin settings that you have for your organization. If you have any additional costs that were also, that will be included as well as part of the production history. So you will see that against your item details in the production history tab. So just to show you that here. We also have obviously a plethora of stock reports available through the system that give you so much information, such as the stock report. As you know, it's an overview of all your stock items, where they're available within the warehouse, potentially where they exist in bin locations, batch numbers, etc. And of course, if they are intercompany items, so if they exist in another organization. So don't forget intercompany comes into play here as well when you're looking for stock availability and trying to meet demand for production. Do I need to get that stock from the other organization and deliver that to the main warehouse, or is that already in the main warehouse and I can use that then for the production run as well? The stock posting report, so it details all the postings, so all the movements that have happened for your stock items. So whether that's your bill of material or actual stock items, raw materials, all of the postings that have occurred against those items. Stock valuation, so how you want to value the stock. So this on the report itself, you can value at a price list or at cost price. You've got various batch reports, so where batches are assigned, their expiry dates, and lots more. So where they've been sold, availability, all the batch movements, so where the item has come into stock and then ultimately has been delivered out. We've also got a selection of reports in the PDF menu, so that you'll see that in your items menu as well, where you can run different stock reports. So I'm just bringing you back to the whole inventory levels, if you need to run reports to see where inventory is currently residing or where it has moved from, the value of that stock. It's all housed here within all of the various different reports. So before we run out of time, I hope you're still okay to stay on board, and I'm just going to go through a demonstration of the production process, adding a production order, bringing it through to MRP, resource planning to schedule, and of course, making the final product. So let me just start by sharing my screen, and we will dive straight in there to Enterprise. So let me just sign in there to my organization. Okay, let me just switch organizations here for you now, and let's begin by, maybe I'll just go back one step and just remind you of where to switch on the production menu. And of course, all the user permissions are here in settings. So in the settings menu, we go in here to user settings. For example, if I just take myself, for example, and click on edit. And if we scroll down, again, we've got to select the organization. So it'll default to the one that you're signed into, but we can select the one that's required. And then just scroll on down and make sure all of the various options are switched on. So for example, in purchasing, if you want somebody to access MRP, make sure that you've got the item reordering switched on. Further down in items, if you want to see the picking, you have to switch on sign pack or sign pick, sorry. And if you want to utilize all of the production functionality, you have to enable production here, and of course switch on production order, BOM report, and production resource planning. So that's how you get up and running and get it enabled on the system. So let's start off here in production, and here we land in the production orders grid itself. Here I get to see a history of all the production orders that I've added to date. I can, of course, reduce that down. Of course, you can see there we have a filter across all of our columns. So of course, you can perform filters if I only want to look at those that are part made or closed, that have been complete, or that are open. If I want to look at those that have a specific planning date or planned date, maybe for tomorrow, I can look at those as well from here. You can see there where we have our WISE panel, our purple WISE tags on our planned start date. For example, when I click on that, I get the resource planner WISE panel. But ultimately what we can do up here at the top, we can create filter reports. So from here, we can create the reports that we need. We can come in here to create and say, well, look, these are going to be my standard reports going forward. I always want to see for a specific machine or user, what production runs are currently pending or in process, and I can create that report for myself. I can do a running total as well for those total fields such as quantity. I can also click here to my elliptical menu. From here, I can export. This becomes a powerful reporting tool as well. Export data to Excel to analyze further. And then ultimately, I can choose the column chooser where I can select other columns, and simply by clicking and dragging those columns onto the grid, I get to see the additional information. So at the bottom here, any of my custom fields, I can also drag and drop those to the grid. So for example, pick status and picker. So just to show you, these are the ones that you saw on the lesson and presentation, that you can access each of these directly from the grid itself. So let's quickly start with creating a new production order. So let me quickly take you through it. So the first thing I'm going to do is select my final item or my bill of material item. So let's just do that. And I'm just going to come on through and I'm going to say that I want to plan and create 2 bikes. That's fine. I can select my destination warehouse where it's going to reside once I complete and make that production run. You can see there the status is pending. I'm the admin, so I'm just going to say that I'm the owner. That's fine. The root user, I'm actually going to say it's the workflow machine. So I'm just going to choose a machine in this instance. So again, I'm just picking what I've defined for this particular organization, but you might have something different. As I've said, it could be a user, it could be a machine, it could be workflow, it could be whatever you've defined for the organization. I've got the order date, we've got the due date. So we've got to consider what we've decided to, deliver to the customer. I'm going to get it there by Monday. I need to have this. This has to be done by Monday. I'm not going to plan it yet from here, but what I am going to do is I'm going to specify the customer who it's for. So for example, I have a sales order already in the system for this particular customer. I can, if I wish, populate my custom fields. So I can populate additional information. So for example, I have a priority level here I want to fill in, so I'll make that high. So we can see here when we come down then to bill of materials, it automatically shows me the components for this particular bill of material item. So I can remove, so I can delete, so I can decide, in fact, I'm not going to need a chain, but unfortunately a bike is no good to us without the chain, so we'll certainly leave that in place. But I might decide, for example, perhaps the frame that I have here is a standard frame and it might just be silver in colour. Maybe I have a different colour frame I'd like to bring in for this particular production run, so I can swap that out. So what I can do here is I can click on the plus sign and I can simply do a search within all my items and add another item to the production run. I can specify the quantity that I want to make. So for example, because this is 2 bikes, you can see there it's already, the planned quantity has already shown me there that's already increased or doubled the quantities of the base quantity automatically for me. In this instance, my components also happen to be coming from the general warehouse. In your instance, it could be that items are coming from different locations. Whatever you've decided are the different warehouses, you could have raw materials or components, or particularly where you might have multi-level bill of materials, they could be coming from different warehouses or different locations. And that's perfectly fine as well. And that will be shown here on the screen. In addition to that of course, we have the production costs. So if I have any production costs already defined against this particular bill of material, that will automatically show. I can, of course, add on additional costs if I know what those costs are going to be at this point in time. Or, which you saw when we go to make the final product, we can add additional costs on at that point in time as well. So lots of things that you can do, and you can see there the planned quantity again for the labor, it's going to increase by 2 because it's two production runs, but I can edit that and I can bring that back down to 1. So everything is doubled based on the quantity required. And of course, you've got remarks and you've got comments. So for external purposes and comments for internal purposes, if you need to populate those as well. So let's just add the production order just so I can show you, okay, default warehouse. I didn't actually say that. Just make sure I've got all the default warehouse for that particular root user. And I'll just make sure that is there. Did I leave anything out on the bill of materials? No, that's perfectly fine. And I don't need a planned date for that. Oh, okay, so I know what the issue is there. I don't have a default warehouse for this particular user. So let me just save this against this user for now. So that's just identified something for you again on setup, which is to do with your default warehouse for your users. So for example, if a machine sits or resides in a specific warehouse, you have to make sure that you have a default warehouse set against that particular machine as well. And that's all that's happened there. I just haven't defined the default warehouse. In fact, I can actually come in here now and do that. Let me just do that. Workflow. And let me just edit that there. So that's where for this particular user, when you come down here to their default warehouse, let me just have a look here at their items. And if we come down here to items, default warehouse, and I'm actually just going to say that it's the general warehouse, that's fine. And I'm going to save that. So that's what it is, another element of the setup. So delighted to be able to show you that as well. If you're wondering why something's not working through, let's now go back into that particular pending production order. And let's just edit that. Let me just allocate that now to the workflow. And let me just save that. And as you can see there, we have no error anymore with relation to saving that production order. Just to mention, I know we've come up to time in terms of what we've allocated for the lesson. As you can see, there is quite a lot. If you're willing to stay on board with me for maybe another 5 to 10 minutes, that would be fantastic. This is fully recorded, of course, if you want to access it after, but I'll just follow this through so you can see it all in action. So there's the production order added. When we look at the grid itself, we can clearly see there's the production order. The great thing here now with all of our UI that we've done throughout the system, so for example here on the production order, we can click here to open the transaction itself, Or we can simply go back here to the grid. We can click on the production order number to activate the WISE panel where there's certain information that we can update against the production order without actually having to edit the overall production order. So what if I've allocated it to the wrong machine to begin with? I can change that from here as well. I can change the root user. Or I can move the status on or the due date if I need to extend that further. So this is where I've said there's been a delay in production and you need to extend the due date for that particular item. And of course, you get to see all of the other great fields, such as the product description, the planned quantity, the actual, which of course will be updated once the final product has been made, component lines picker, so many fields of information that you'll be able to utilize for the purpose of reporting. Moving on then to the bill of materials tab. So this, as I said, has been filtered to only look at all of your BOM items. So all items that have been defined as a bill of material. The great thing here is that you're able to look at this as an overview, and for something that somebody maybe has asked for you to produce, that even before going into production, you can come in here to the bill of materials tab, review the item in question and go, well, actually, do I need to? Let me just bring that up, for example, the bicycle 2, which is this one here. Do I need to order stock in? So I can see there the stock on hand, what's committed stock, quantity on production, what's available, price lists. I can see the price. So this is the price under which it would have been on the price list that you've allocated to the item master. If there's any quantities on order, I can click on those as well. And of course, if it's batch or serial number, what those batches are they still available? Have they reached their expiry date? So I get an overview of those particular items. I can search all items, or I can just reduce it down to search within a specific selection of items. I can, of course, if I need to, create a new bill of material item from here, which will open up the item master to start creating a brand new item. This, of course, can be exported to Excel. I can create filtered reports. So there are certain default reports we have available for you already on the bill of materials screen. So I can see in-stock items, over-committed items, items on production order. So I can reduce that down. So these are already in place for you so that if you needed to see, well, what items do I have in production at the moment? Okay, great. Okay, they're all allocated. Okay, where are they gone? Okay, what's the route? What's the user? So if I need to drill into a specific production order, for example, that I can see exactly what they are. And of course, you can utilize the column chooser here to expose and to show additional fields that are relevant to you on this screen. So simply drag and drop them to the grid so that you can see them on the bill of materials run as well. So you can see that all here in your actions menu. And as I said, there are certain filters available, but you can, of course, create your own filters as well from here. And of course, filter directly within the columns themselves. Clicking on the items tab will simply just take you back to the items screen itself, which is the items. And you can see there, it's still got the filter on that I have, but this is all stock items. So all stock items, regardless of raw materials or bill of materials, but it comes back into, as you can see here, the items menu to show you all of those items. So just going back then to production. So let's take a look at the MRP. So let's take a look at MRP in relation to that production order. But let me just go back to the production order for 1 second. So just at the very top of that production order, I want to show you here just under the item details. So under where it says bicycle 2, it tells me there is 10 items in stock, 3 committed to customers with 7 available to sell. Based on current raw materials, based on no availability of raw materials, we can't produce any at the moment. So we need to do an MRP run to bring those items into stock. So we start off here with the MRP screen, and let me just disable everything for you. So there's 2 things that you can do here. You can run this by stock items, or you can simply run this by bill of materials. If I run it by bill of materials, I only see items that are finished products. So only those items that are finished products. And from here, of course, then I can start to filter out. So for example, if I wanted to create a production run for a certain amount of finished products, I can do that through here. But first and foremost, if I need to see, if I know I don't have enough stock for those production runs, I need to run an MRP on my stock items to see where my raw materials are at. So what I can do here is I can apply filters where I have it based on stock items here at the top. I can look at all of my items. Obviously, you could have thousands of items. You might want to reduce it down. And this is where the filtering comes into play. Now, I'm just going to make it easier for us all to read it on screen. I'm just going to bring this down to the bike parts because I just want to look at the components that are part of that particular bill of material, just so that we can see it a little bit easier on screen for everybody. We can also then run filters that show it for a destination warehouse. You can reorder to a maximum or a minimum quantity. So for example, reorder to maximum or reorder to by reorder quantity. So this is where you've defined a maximum quantity or a reorder quantity in your item master. Your destination warehouse is where you want this raw material to be received into. So that might be something other than the general warehouse. It could be somewhere else. It could be a receiving warehouse. So again, wherever that resides for you in the organization. You can also run this by a default supplier. So if there's a certain supplier you only ever get all of these components from, you can select that supplier so that you'll only see those specific components. And just to tighten it down on the selection. From a stock level perspective, do you want to see all stock levels? So if I was to apply that, I would then see all of the items, so all stock levels, regardless of, because I haven't said whether the item has run out or is below minimum or maximum stock levels at this point. So I can see all of the stock items that are involved in this particular group. So if I want to just look at those items that are below or at minimum stock, I can then apply a filter and I get to see the ones that in fact require replenishment. So by looking at this screen here, we can see on hand, free stock, minimum, maximum stock. If I have to find those in my item master, I can see the reorder quantity is currently 0. The suggested reorder, it's already telling me, well, I suggest you reorder the max. So to bring it back to the maximum stock, because that's what I've asked it to do. You can see here, reorder to the maximum. If I had said reorder by reorder quantity, and then I apply filters, you can see there that changes. So the suggested reorder reduces down to 15 because that's what I've defined against my item. So what I can do now, I can also decide to see, well, okay, that's fine, that those items are below minimum stock, but do I have them on order from my suppliers? So I can check this here by switching on the include PO from suppliers. Do I have them on order already? Have I got them committed to a sales order separately? Generally, you wouldn't have them on the stock items or the raw materials, but you might have sold a set of handlebars to the customer or be selling additional items to your customer. So you might want to check that as well. Or more importantly, are they committed to production? So this is where I want to see what is currently committed to production. So I can actually see that for each of those items, each of the quantities that are committed to production, I'm going to need 5 of the first, 5 of the second, because I do have other production orders that I've added. I have another one in there for 3 bikes. So this one we have for 2. So you can see where the quantity has accumulated now. So I'm like, okay, I've got production run where I need to have 5 of this item, 5 of this, and 10 of this one. I don't have the free stock. I can clearly see that. I can see the minimum stock. We're at and below minimum stock levels at the moment. And the maximum stock is 30. It's suggesting I reorder 15. So I'm going to go ahead with this. So what I can do here is I can also switch on this option here, which is to automatically populate the reorder quantity with the suggested reorder. Or alternatively, I can simply click in there and specify that quantity myself. So what I can do now is I can select the lines to run the MRP4 and create the purchase order. So success. So what we have here, and you can see there's a link to our purchase order. So it's now done. if I click on the number of the purchase order, I can come in here and I can see exactly what it's ran the purchase order for. And you can see there it's taken the various costs that I've already defined within the system, and it's taken the various open quantities. And of course, what I can do now is so they've gone off to my supplier, and of course I can receive those in, so I can do a receipt. I'll just bring that stock in anyway so that we can complete the production run. And I'll just click on save on that at the purchase order or purchase delivery. And now, so what we have here is, and this is of course synonymous with where you have batch and serial items. So I have to complete selection of batch and serial numbers. So I need to, because I'm receiving this in for the first time, I'm just going to create, this is going to be the quantity of 15, and I'm just going to put in a date for the end of the year, just so that we can bring that through. And the same here with the handlebars, and 15, and I'm just going to put it through to the end of the year. So this is just synonymous. That will happen when you're receiving in goods that are batch or serial traced, so any perishable raw materials. Let me just bring that in, and again I'm just going to populate that with a date, and I'm just going to close that, and I'm going to save that. Say no to that. Perfect, so that's the delivery done. So let's now go back to production. And if we look here at the production order, you can see there number 32, it's still pending. So I now want to make sure, and in fact, if I now look at the production order itself, and just let that re-update. So it's just going to update these stock totals. So there we go. You can produce 4 based on the raw materials. So we're well and truly covered now. We've received in that stock, and you can see there that that particular information has now updated. So let's move on quickly there to resource planning, where we come in here, and like I said, you can choose plan production. So if we start over here on the right hand side, so this is where you will choose the route, the user, the machine, whatever it is that you want to specify. So I'm going to just come all the way down here to the bottom, or in fact there it is there, workflow machine, and I'm just going to specify that. I am then going to look at my calendar view. So you can see there it's currently looking in a view in a work week, but I'm going to change it to just simply to today. Cell duration is every half hour. I'm going to put that into 1.5. We go up to 2 hours. And then row height, so we can increase the row height, and then we can apply that. So you can choose the view that suits. Through the filter button here, we can choose the colors that suit us as well. So you can come in here to the RGB code and define the colors that suit you for each of those transaction types. And I mentioned already about the green for open and the red for closed. So you can decide yourself what is required. And of course, there's other filters here where you can look at different types. So I'm just going to leave that as is, as the standard setting. And now I'm going to go to plan productions. So you can see there, because I am only looking at the workflow machine, and I can also do this here as well. If I go to filter, I can also specify that I only want to look at those that are allocated to the workflow machine, that particular user or that particular route. And as you can see, what happens is the production order list reduces down to just that particular production order. So what I'm going to do then, I'm going to plan that in to start from 2 p.m. today. And as you can see there, it's slotted in, but I'm now going to extend that, and I'm going to say, well, that's going to need, for example, 2 hours production. So I will update the production order here, and all I've done there is just clicked and dragged it to extend the time. I can, of course, if I want to see the details, I can click here on the production order and I can view the details. So that will bring me back into the production order. And of course, I can see the planned date, which we can see here on the screen. And if I go back to the production orders grid itself, I can also see, if we just wait for that to update on the resource planning. Let me just grab that there for you there. So here we have the planned start date has also updated. It was NA. And if I click onto that, you will see the start time And the end time, I obviously extended beyond the 6 o'clock, but that's fine, just to show you that. But you can also change that directly from the Wise panel. And if for any reason you need to swap that over with a different machine, you can also do that as well. So lots and lots of different things that you can do when you're utilizing production, from MRP to resource planning, and of course then for picking the production order as well. Production orders will show here for all orders. You can set a production order to be picked by just selecting it here, specify the picker, for example, assign that picker, and then you will see there that it's assigned to pick for that particular user. And of course, ultimately then on the production order itself, let me just bring you back into that particular production and let's progress it and move it on in terms of production. So we've planned it and now we want to say that it's in progress. So it's now gone to that particular warehouse and it's in progress. And you may want to then, once it's complete, you can then make the final product. So by clicking on the make button once it's available, you'll be able to come in here and make the final product. So from here, you'll be able to specify the quantity to make, the destination warehouse to make it to, if there's any additional costs incurred at this point in time. If the item is batched and serialized, you will need to make sure, which it is. In fact, for this particular bike, it's a bomb batch item, so you can create those particular batch serial numbers. And of course, for each of the components, you can select the relevant batch or serial number to produce during the make process and follow it all the way through. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining me today and taking all of the additional time out that you've taken in your morning. And I hope this has been helpful. And we look forward to hearing from you, ultimately look forward to hearing from you and how you're getting on with the production menu. And of course, at all times, how we can improve upon the existing offering. There is still plenty more to come, as I've mentioned already, around the WMS, but do let us know as we move forward. Your feedback is important to us, how it's working, how we can make it work better for you, and just ultimately that it's making a difference, of course, to you and your organization. Thanks again, guys. I appreciate all your time and I look forward to seeing you again sometime soon. Take care. Bye-bye.